to the King. Welcome back to your way happy Bible study on CUBN. We're in Genesis chapter 20. Real happy to see all of you here. Let's get into it. Let's not waste any time. Chapter 20 of the book of Genesis. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Behold, thou art but a dead man. For the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, She is my sister? See, she is his half-sister. His wife is Sarah. She is his half-sister, but she's also his wife. Way back then, they were kind of limited on who they could marry. And they wanted to, they wanted to keep those bloodlines to themselves. So Sarah was his half-sister. But also she's his wife. Reekage, huh? Okay. In verse 5, said he not unto me, She is my sister? And even she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. See, God is the one who made sure that he didn't touch her. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. See, God is the one who made sure that didn't happen. Now therefore restore the man his wife. For he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. He has a really good incentive to restore this man's wife to him. In verse 8, Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee? And thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake, because Sarah was very beautiful. And Abraham was afraid, even though God is his friend. He shouldn't be afraid, should he? He should know that God has his back and that everything will be fine. But he's still walking in some fear here. He said, he's thinking to himself, surely the fear of God is not in this place. Well, you know what? Even though the fear of God may not be in that place, even though he thinks it's not, it is. Because the Lord spoke to Abimelech, didn't he? He thinks they will slay me for my wife's sake, because she's very fair. In verse 12, and yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. So see, she's his half-sister. They both have the same father, but different mothers. Yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me. At every place whither we shall come, say of me, He is my brother. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. In verse 15 of Genesis chapter 20. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee. Dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes, unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech, and his wife, and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech, because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And that was a huge, a huge deal. Let's go straight into chapter 21 of Genesis. Okay. Genesis chapter 21 and verse 1. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. He was 100. Isn't that something? And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. And she said, Who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. He loves his son Ishmael. And God said unto Abraham, Let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. So God is telling Abraham, listen to your wife and send Hagar and Ishmael away. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called. So Isaac is the child of the promise. And he is the one that God had designated to be the heir of the promises after Abraham. In verse 13, and also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away. And she departed, and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. In verse 15, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat her down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot, about as far as you can shoot a bow and arrow. She put him under the shrub. You're looking at this is the desert. It's hot, her water's gone. So she puts him under the shade of a shrub that she finds, and then she goes about a bow shot's distance. For she said, "Let me not see the death of the child." And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. She thinks Ishmael's going to die because they're out of water and they're in the desert. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And that means he's not going to die right there. In verse 19, and God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. That's someone good with a bow and arrow. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. See, she was Egyptian. And like Abraham wanted a wife of his own people for his son Isaac, Hagar wanted an Egyptian wife for Ishmael. And so it says, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt, because she was Egyptian. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing. Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen, and gave them unto Abimelech. And both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me, that I have digged this well. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear, both of them. They've made a covenant with one another. In verse 32, thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. Wow. Now we're going to go straight in to chapter 22 of the book of Genesis. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac. Now, see, Ishmael has left. He doesn't see his son Ishmael anymore after this. And he said, well, Ishmael shows up when he dies. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. Wow. He's being asked to sacrifice his son. In verse 3, and Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son and clave the wood for the burnt offering and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. This would be Mount Moriah. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. That is an expression of his faith. See, did you see that? He said, abide ye here with the ass, I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. He's saying that he will come back with his son Isaac, even though he knows he's supposed to sacrifice Isaac. So he's showing faith even then, because Abraham had a great faith in God, and they were friends. God called Abraham his friend, okay? And what's interesting here is Abraham was reasoning within himself that if he sacrificed Isaac, that God would bring him back from the dead, because there were promises in Isaac that God had made him, and he believes God, and he believes those promises, but he also has been asked to sacrifice Isaac. So he's reasoning within himself that God will just raise him from the dead, bring him right back. He has great faith in God, and they were friends. In verse 6, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife. They carried the fire in like a little pot thing with a handle. And a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, my father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, here's another expression of his faith. Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And that's true. He's still speaking in faith, see? And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Now, Isaac is 17 years old at this time. He is very capable of defying his father, who is very old. Abraham's like, 117 years old at this point. And Isaac is he's an adolescent boy who is becoming a man, and he was strong. He could have refused, but he's born of God, okay? And he's obedient to his father, even to submit to his own death here. He's obedient. And he laid Isaac, he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. See, he's reasoning in his mind that God will just raise him from the dead. That's what he believes at this point. He doesn't believe that he's giving up his son forever. Okay? And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here am I. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. See, Isaac was his only son at this point because Ishmael's long gone. In verse 13, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, and this term means that God will provide. Jehovah-Jireh is the Lord our provider, is what it means. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. God is still making him promises, and he did receive his son pretty much, who was back from the dead, because he didn't have to give him up, but he believed that God could raise Isaac back to life if he was sacrificed. So he was willing to. And Isaac, you got to understand, Isaac was seriously beloved, okay? Abraham loved him so much that it was a fine line there between his love for his son and his love for God in appearance. But God tested him and found that he loves God more and was willing to give up even his precious only son at God's request. And this was something that was really important.
Sorry, I don't
know that. Never mind. Okay. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Isn't that amazing? Oh, God is so good. He's wonderful. Hi, Janine. Hey, Fred. It's great to see you. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hi, David, Penny, Anthony, Jan. Wonderful to see all of you. Okay, verse 18 of Genesis chapter 22. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. So see it, what he said. I love you too, Janine. Wonderful to see you. And so Abraham returned to his young men. See, he had told them, I and the lad will return to you, and that was spoken in faith. And that's exactly how it happened, too. In verse 20, and it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, whose his firstborn, or Huz and Buzz, is it Huz and Buzz, or who's and booze? Who knows? We'll give it a short sound here. Huz, his firstborn, and Buzz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram. Oh, we're already at the top of the hour. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back.